Good afternoon. My name is Hugh Lufton. I'm the principal of Lufton Associates, chartered planning consultancy based in Stafford. Today's video is going to be one of a number, possibly two, possibly three, looking at highly contentious area of planning, something where policy and legislation is evolving quickly, has evolved a lot recently, is on a long process of continuum, and is getting, in my view, increasingly technical and complicated, and that is the issue of biodiversity net gain, BNG. And I'm going to do it in three parts because the videos might become really long and boring, and I can kind of divide it up into legislation, then maybe history, and then maybe some of my thoughts and comments about it. And that's going to come from a bit of an agricultural perspective because I'm from a family of farmers on both sides and have quite strong views, I suppose. Maybe you would say there were inherent prejudices about how nature interacts with agriculture and the priorities between looking after the bats, bees and the bugs, the eagles and the red squirrels, and actually producing food in this country. And the balance between whether we're looking after humans or whether we're looking after animals and everything else. So that's maybe, I don't know how to split this up yet, but this is the legislative part, so I'll get into that. So biodiversity net gain has been evolving through the planning process, and it became a statutory requirement. This is quite a key juncture really on the 12th of February 2024. Now that was of course under the last Tory administration, and nothing has changed really in the sense of its strength since the new government came in July. It hasn't exactly been gained anything extra in the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework consultation, hasn't gained strength there, but the statutory background to it was already established. The statutory background to it as it stands as a legal requirement for developers to, or when you put in a planning application, to ensure there is a positive gain for biodiversity by the creation of habitat, comes from Schedule 7A of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, as inserted by Section 14 of the Environment Act of 2021. Now, that is primary English legislation, but really this comes from over a longer period. It comes from a European legislative background, and really the strength of biodiversity, habitat protection, things like that comes from the EU. And I struggled to disenfranchise from when we went through a whole process of Brexit, how we got closer to it, further away from it, and closer to it again. What is biodiversity net gain in terms of a kind of statutory definition? And the best one is, well, it's an approach to development. It makes sure that habitats for wildlife are left in a measurably better state than they were before the development was commenced. Developers must deliver a 10% biodiversity net gain, and this means a development will result in more or better quality of natural habitat than before commencement. How is it measured? Actually, I could do a whole video on how it's measured, to be honest, but it could be several hours long and a bit tedious. It's measured this is the best bit of it, actually. This is the bit that I like the most about it, I suppose, is it kind of puts some mathematical science to it, which you then think, this all seems credible, when it probably isn't. But you look at biodiversity units, so you look at your sites in terms of their intrinsic biodiversity value at the start. So let's say take a piece of agricultural land that's been ploughed, has no biodiversity value really. It's there to produce crops for human beings. If it's a fallow field from the start, it probably got a value of 0. So really, actually, pretty much anything you do to it is going to add value. Now, if you're starting from a position of a deciduous woodland, then that's a little bit more difficult. So that element, so basically, okay, so you take a 0 value in year 1, agricultural land. Say let's develop a bit of a mixed use housing site, residential site, with some, you're probably needing a balancing pond on there, you're probably needing some recreational space, you've got gardens, you may have decided to put a hedgerow around it rather than fencing. You can get a bit of biodiversity net gain from all those things if you're starting from a 0 perspective and you measure it every 5 years. You need really, I have done one of these that has been right through the planning system from I've done more than one, from application to appeal and to permission and to approval of reserved matters, where I actually dared to do the calculation myself. And you need a bit of thinking about it, but it's all sort of seems quite credible. Piece of pasture land has a low biodiversity habitat value. Then overall on your site, you have got some housing units, but you've maybe got created a wildlife area, dog walking area or something like that, with some ponds and stuff. 5 years, you can gain quite a lot from that. You've planted some trees. 5 years on, you've gained quite a lot from that. There's a broad split between land units and hedgerow units. So if you enhance your hedgerows with native species of trees, for example, put lots of hornbeam in there and oak and willow and so on, you can start to build in biodiversity net gain. The 10% in that perspective doesn't seem that challenging. I have serious concerns about how this operates, though, and I have serious concerns about the fact it's become a statutory requirement. So, as I say, it came in the Environment Act of 2021, became legalised in 2024 on the 12th of February 2024. That a planning application has to, or development proposal has to demonstrate it. In the next, so I didn't give too much legislative context to it, but that is it. There isn't, in the publication NPPF, there isn't a paragraph that actually directly refers to 10% biodiversity net gain. So that's not in the published changes that have came out in July. But paragraph 188 is probably the closest seminal paragraph, and I'll read paragraph 188. This says that the presumption in favour of sustainable development does not apply where the plan or project is likely to have significant effects on habitats, either alone or in combination with other plans and projects, unless an appropriate assessment has concluded that that plan or project will not adversely affect the integrity of the habitat site. So that's the broad basis of it. Comes from a European legislative background over a long period, 20, 30 years or so, to get to the position we're in now, which is quite serious, I suppose, because it's a legal requirement of a planning application. So that's part one. And then in the next part, I'm going to start fleshing that out a little bit with thoughts about how that relates to food production, how it relates to prospects for development, a bit more commentary about the context of the legislation and the guidance about who does what, who has responsibility for what, etc. Okay, thanks very much.